Mary Boyle was born on the 14th of June 1970 in Sparkhill, Birmingham, which is located in England. She was born to her parents, Anne and Charlie Boyle, who were both originally from Ireland. The family, including Mary's twin sister, also named Anne, and her older brother, Paddy, would all move back to Ireland in Cashelard. This is in the Rosses area, around here, in County Donegal. And they made this move not long after Mary and Anne were born. It seems that the family just wanted to be closer to their relatives, as this move placed them in a rural, close-knit community where extended family visits would become much easier than while over in England. Though this move would also set the stage for the events to come in 1977. On the 17th of March 1977, St Patrick's Day, Mary and the rest of her immediate family drove from their home in Cashelard to visit their grandparents at their isolated dairy farm in Cashelard. This is near Ballyshannon on the Donegal-Fermanagh border. The farm was in a remote, hilly area with boggy terrain, and at that time there were no nearby telephones or modern amenities. The gathering at this rural farmhouse comprised of 6 adults and 5 children in total. The family stayed overnight into the day of the disappearance, the 18th of March 1977. The location of this farm in Cashelard is significant. Given the kind of terrain that it was situated within, it presented huge difficulties for the subsequent searches. The proximity to Northern Ireland also introduced jurisdictional complexities, as these on-the-border incidents so often do. The issue is that the centralisation of information becomes awkward, and multiple authorities have to stay in constant communication to keep things organised. The morning of the 18th began routinely, and the day went mostly as expected. Mary, who was 6 at this time, helped her mother with the dishes after the family had eaten. Afterwards, they shared a hug, and Mary left to go outside to play with her sister and the other younger ones. At the time, she was dressed in a lilac hand-knitted cardigan, brown jeans, ribbons in her hair, and black Wellington boots that were slightly too big, which were fitting for the muddy countryside. At 3:30 PM, Mary was outside playing with the others, and at some point around that time, her uncle, Jerry Gallagher, came outside of the house to collect a ladder that he had borrowed from the Macaulays, who owned a neighbouring farm. He had intended to return it at that time, and as he set off, Mary decided that she wanted to go with him, and began to follow while eating a packet of crisps. This neighbouring farmhouse was approximately 800 metres away across the hillside up an isolated unpaved shortcut, and was a journey that would usually take around 10 minutes or less. The route across, which was practically a straight line, cut through a boggy area. At the moment of separation, the local superintendent at the time, Don Murray, stated that as Jerry and Mary proceeded down the path, they reached a pool of water or a flooded section of the lane that was too deep for her to cross without getting soaked. At this point, which was now somewhere between 3:30 and 3:45 PM, she had given up and turned around to head back to the grandparents' house. The separation occurred at the midpoint of the path to the Macaulays, and would be the last time that she was ever seen. Jerry continued onto the neighbour's farm, where it was reported that he stopped and spoke to the Macaulays for about 30 minutes. Upon returning to the grandparents' house, just before 4:20 PM, Jerry set himself up along a wall that he'd started to fix on the property, and he got to work. It was just after 4:20 PM when Mary's mother had come outside to check on the young ones playing and realised that Mary was not there. Family members, including Anne, began searching the immediate area outside the property. They called out her name and checked the nearby fields, fences and hedges, but there was no trace of Mary anywhere. They didn't find any clothing scraps nor the crisp packet, and they didn't find any obvious footprints to indicate that she'd strayed away anywhere. It was noted that if Mary had fallen into a bog, the crisp packet would likely have floated to the surface somewhere later, which was never discovered. The return journey to the house should have taken her around 5 minutes, with some accounts suggesting it should have taken only about 3. She was around 400 metres away or so, since she'd only made it halfway down the path. Here's what Mary's mother said. "I looked out the front door. The rest of the children were playing in a thicket in the front garden. Mary was not there. My brother Jerry was fixing a stone wall in front of the house. I asked him if he'd seen Mary. He didn't answer. He must not have heard me. 10 minutes later, I asked did anyone see Mary, and Jerry shot off in his car down the road. When Jerry came back to the house, he said that she'd followed him earlier to the Macaulay's house and that she turned back. I got into the car and drove along the road in different directions. It was a nightmare." Before we go any further, if I could just ask you to like the video and hype it, then I would appreciate that very much. And please consider turning on notifications for the channel and subscribing if you haven't already. By late afternoon, as daylight faded, the family continued their search. With no landline available, they flagged down fishermen on the nearby loch. Jerry was searching around the area when Anne shouted for him to go and alert the Gardaí. Jerry called back for her to do it as he wanted to keep searching. In the end, one of the fishermen, PJ Coughlin, drove to Ballyshannon to alert the Gardaí somewhere between 5 and 6 PM, around 2 hours after Mary was last seen. Panic set in as searchers, including all of the family, combed the steep, boggy terrain shouting Mary's name. An appeal for volunteers was broadcast that evening from a local theatre during a drama festival, which bolstered boots on the ground. That evening, and well into the night, the Gardaí were present and initiated formal searches. According to accounts from the original investigating Gardaí, they cited that the 2-hour delay in notifying them was crucial. It was essentially stated that losing those initial golden hours significantly reduced the chances of finding Mary, no matter of what actually had taken place, whether suffering from an accident or facing foul play. In the event of foul play, if a stranger had been nearby, for example, it obviously meant that this potential perpetrator had ample time and opportunity to cross into a nearby county or across the border entirely. When the Gardaí did arrive, they questioned family members and the fishermen, to which one of them reported seeing a suspicious red car. While I am not sure precisely what they told the Gardaí at that time, in 2016, PJ Coughlin stated that, "I believe I saw her being driven away in a car. There's no doubt in my mind that she was lifted." However, on a BBC podcast in 2019, he would change, or rather correct his statement, I guess. And he stated then that he had not seen Mary herself, just the suspicious red car. If Mary was not seen in or near the car, then I'm not sure exactly what was suspicious about it, other than it being in that exact area at that exact time. Given how isolated the area was, you'd have to imagine then it wasn't local and the people present hadn't seen it before. That would also have to have been extraordinary timing and would have required Mary to have crossed paths with the occupants. Given that the fisherman hadn't seen Mary, you can't really make definitive statements, though I can see how it would have appeared to be odd. It seems like one of those moments where a mental model has been built despite the fact that there was no real evidence to suggest involvement. In any case, one of the largest search efforts to ever have taken place in Ireland was about to begin. In the days following the 18th, the Gardaí created a filmed reconstruction of Mary's last known movements using her twin sister as a stand-in. Anne was able to successfully retrace the path from the point of separation from Jerry back to the house without any problems at all. Divers came in and started probing the lochs. The entire lake at Upper Cashelard behind the grandparents' house was drained. Local neighbours, family members, many volunteers, alongside a large Gardaí presence, scoured the challenging terrain together. Strangely, not a single piece of evidence was found anywhere, and the Irish Army got involved too, and despite searching for months, still nothing was found. These search parties examined fields, hedgerows, bogs and waterways. Many of the local bogs were drained in an effort to find any hint of Mary, but it just wasn't happening. Based on the publicly reported timeline surrounding this case, it is indicated that Jerry returned to the farmhouse at around 4:20 PM or just before. This was after having been last seen with Mary sometime between approximately 3:30 PM and 3:45 PM. It has been stated in media coverage that he spoke with the Macaulays for around 30 minutes during that interval. If that is accurate, this timeline would significantly reduce the amount of unaccounted for time before the family search began, especially if the reported conversation with the neighbours lasted for around 30 minutes, which is a significant portion of that period of time. Given the rural, hilly and boggy nature of that terrain, the distance a person could have travelled on foot in that window off the path would have been very limited. Based on that timeline, it is difficult to determine how Mary could have left the area. And this is one of the aspects of the case that continues to raise questions about what happened in the minutes after her last sighting and the start of the family search. Because the scale of the search operation that took place was so large, it is understandable that people have questioned how it could be possible that Mary was not located at that time in the area. In the absence of physical evidence that would have suggested that she succumbed to the terrain, such as entering a bog, some commenters have theorised that she may have been taken from the area. The critical issue seems to be during the timeline as reported, whether this brief window between the last sighting, the 30-minute chat with the neighbours, and then returning by 4:20 PM allowed for enough time for Mary to have been removed from the vicinity entirely. As reported by The Independent in 1999 during a conversation with Superintendent Aidan Murray, "She definitely disappeared between A and B," he said. With a puckered brow, he glanced at the damp, boggy distance between them. How could anybody dispose of a body in 20 minutes? On the day Mary went missing, there were 3 poachers illegally fishing with an otter board. These guys have eyes at the back of their heads and would have been keeping their eyes out for the Gardaí. They never saw anything that day. This is actually a good point. You'd think that if there was a third party in the area and something happened, they might have heard something go down, or a scream, or something along those lines, but they didn't. Retired Garda Sergeant Martin Collins, one of the original investigators, has said that he does not believe Mary wandered off and fell into water, because according to him, every slurry pit, swamp and body of water in the immediate area was drained and searched at the time. However, based on statements that Aidan Murray made, there seems to be a discrepancy here. He said, "Because we had no body, there wasn't enough to go on. We have no high-tech equipment like we have now. We were basically plumbing the depths of bogs with short sticks rather than detectors. She could have fallen into a swally hole, a big bog hole covered over with a layer of old vegetation. It floats like a mat and opens like skin. But with nothing, only this mountain." It's always interesting, or frustrating really, when you have statements like that. One suggesting a thorough search, while the other suggests prodding at bogs with sticks. I'd imagine that has to mean that bogs and such were drained in 1977 and over time in subsequent searches over the years, because we know that the entire lake at Cashelard had been drained, I believe, in 1977. The other point in relation to the suggestion that Mary could have succumbed to the terrain is that it would have required her leaving the path. Critics and Mary's sister, Anne, argue that the path was relatively simple and that it was unlikely that Mary could have gotten lost or strayed. Again, Anne was able to navigate the return journey from the halfway point back to the grandparents' house just fine. It is just important to add that, obviously, given everything that had happened, it was hardly a natural experiment. Anne will have been aware that Mary was missing and that people were filming and just walked back. For Mary, when she was out there, I suppose one could argue that things might have been a bit more natural and she could have explored and strayed and then got into dangerous boggy territory. There's no evidence of that, of course, but it is possible. The years following the disappearance caused an irreconcilable schism within the family and the broader community as to what was responsible. It seems that there is a lot of ongoing debate around this. The authorities themselves treat Mary's case as an ongoing missing person investigation, and it's not clear what their suspicions might be behind closed doors. Mary's mother had consistently expressed belief that she could still be alive, citing the absence of a body or any belongings found. She had opposed public campaigns that declare Mary must have passed away as a result of foul play. The Gardaí did focus for a while on the idea that some kind of nomadic individual might have seen the moment of separation between Mary and Jerry and then took advantage of that situation, though nothing ever really came of that line of inquiry. It's also important to clarify just how isolated this area was. There were only 2 houses anywhere near one another, that being the family farmhouse and the Macaulay farmhouse, and even they were separated by about half a mile. That was about it, and civilization was largely well away from this area. It seems so drastically unlikely that anyone would have just been out and about randomly in this area, waiting for an opportunity like this. While I can't get too into the family disputes and accusations, unlike Mary's mother, Mary's sister on the other hand, alongside many commenters, believe that Mary was met with foul play by someone known to her. We also know that Mary's mother and sister had a complete cessation of contact after their differences as pertaining to their thoughts and beliefs as to what happened on that day. After the infighting that took place between members of the family, the Gardaí looked to have made a policy decision that only Mary's mother would be designated point of contact for the authorities. Many people believed that to be unfair, and believed that this was a decision that minimised Mary's sister's influence in regards to the investigation. Anne herself had expressed frustration as to not being kept informed in the same way that her mother was. In 2011, the Gardaí launched a new review into the circumstances surrounding the disappearance. It was led by a review team and headed by an Assistant Commissioner, Kieran Kenny, from the Northern region, and they were all said to be passionate about wanting to get to the bottom of this case. They conducted a wide range of interviews and further searches with the assistance of forensic experts. This work did apparently yield new evidence, though the specifics were not publicly shared. Based on whatever this evidence was in 2011, a rather major development occurred on the 21st of October 2014, where a 64-year-old man, who was already known to the authorities and imprisoned at that time, was rearrested and brought in for questioning. This was the first actual arrest in relation to Mary in the 37 years that had passed by 2014. At the time, the Gardaí expressed strong public confidence, with an Assistant Commissioner stating that the arrest had brought them one step closer to recovering where Mary had been all this time. However, the evidence can't have been that great because this arrest was short-lived. On the 22nd of October, quite literally the day after the initial arrest, the man was released from custody without charge. As a result of this, people seem to believe that this evidence must have been circumstantial, or more likely testimonial, and was completely insufficient. I'd assume it was enough to bring the man in and then hope he would have just admitted to it. You can be fairly sure that the evidence can't have been that great, since Mary's case has been in the public eye for a very long time now, and you'd have to imagine that the authorities would just love to have the case solved. In 2016, a journalist by the name of Gemma O'Doherty, whom I don't really know anything about, other than she released a 1 hour and 23-minute film going over the entire incident, which is certainly worth a watch. In the film, Mary's sister publicly supported the known perpetrator hypothesis. 2 Garda sergeants were interviewed, and one claimed that certain pressures had been exerted onto their investigation from above. He stated that he was told to ease off by a superior when questioning a man. It seems that the media and attention generated by the film prompted the Gardaí to conduct a high-profile and significant excavation near Cashelard in the same year of its release. This search involved surveying the land and digging in areas nearby the very spot that she was last seen, but the effort failed to uncover anything. This failure actually led to new speculations in and of itself, where some began to suggest that there was such a large amount of time that had passed that the body could have been moved at a later date after the original search took place in 1977. Over the years, numerous hypotheses have been put forwards in an attempt to explain what happened to Mary on that day in March of 1977. One suggestion was that she may have strayed and then fell into a bog, although in that instance you think that the search efforts might have uncovered something. Early media reports at the time of the disappearance did speculate that the cause could have been down to a natural mishap, but these thoughts generally seem to have faded away, as no clothing nor the crisp packet or anything else ever came to light. Others have speculated in regards to foul play. Mary's sister seems to believe that to have taken place in the form of someone who knew Mary, while a lot of people also suggest that an opportunistic stranger might have seen the separation and then came across Mary. The local fisherman did mention seeing a red car in the area and initially seemed to have been convinced that it had something to do with the disappearance, though did seem to walk back on that later. Given the extreme isolation of the area, many have regarded this kind of scenario as being unlikely. Like every hypothesis out there, none of them have ever been supported by evidence. We have a person that vanished without a trace, and so thoroughly that not even a single shred of evidence ever turned up to conclusively point in any direction. I would also add that if the statements made by the retired Garda officers are true regarding orders to ease off, it raises difficult questions. I can't speculate too much, but I certainly, and can only hope, that order wasn't premature or worse, and that it didn't stop evidence from arising. Almost 50 years later, what happened to Mary is still not known. There has never been any kind of trace found whatsoever. No clothing, crisp packet, or a body has ever surfaced, despite one of the largest search operations in Ireland to have ever taken place. The Gardaí continue even today and treat the case as a live missing person inquiry, and they periodically renew appeals for information. But no arrests or anything else has ever stuck, and no definitive official explanation has emerged. For Mary's mother, the absence of a body, for a time, kept a slither of hope alive that Mary was taken in 1977, and she could still have been out there somewhere. For her twin sister and many others, they pointed the finger at someone Mary knew and trusted on that remote hillside. Whatever actually happened, the disappearance of Mary Boyle on the 18th of March in 1977 shattered a family and divided a community. At this stage, it seems that if it's ever going to be understood, it's going to take someone with direct knowledge speaking up, or some random excavation uncovering something important. If you have any information, no matter how small or long ago, even if it feels irrelevant, the Gardaí still urge people to contact them, and I believe you can even do that confidentially online. That about brings us to the end of this. Please do remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for the channel if you haven't already, and also to like the video and hype it if you can. I'd be very grateful. I'd just like to thank you for watching, and a really big thank you to the patrons who've been running around on the screen. If you would like to become a Patreon and support the channel, there is a link in the description. With that being said, be safe all, peace.